Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
So, congratulations to us. It's our 50th show today.
That's right, number 50.
I had no idea until about 48 hours ago. Producer Jim Omohundra said, yeah, 50th show on Friday. I won't be there. Oh, okay.
Well, the team is traveling today.
True.
I mean, he's got
In
other
fact,
obligations.
as we speak,
yeah,
they're up in the air on their way to Atlanta. But, yeah, 50 shows, just like that, flies by.
And we can't thank everyone enough. We did a couple of dry runs in training camp, and then we started when we broke training camp. And so we want to thank everyone. And you can always find us, iTunes, azcardinals.com, Periscope, YouTube, SoundCloud. So we do appreciate everyone. You're tuning in live or obviously getting a chance to download it and watching at your convenience. So thank you.
Absolutely. We're here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center. And with that, it is a Football Friday, so time to take off and tell you what's ahead on the show here this afternoon. Well, we'll hear from Larry Fitzgerald. Of course, it is a Fitz Friday. Julio versus Pat P. No matter the team's records, when these two share the field, it's always fun. Aaron Rodgers was the first, then it was Matthew Stafford. Will Matt Ryan be next? We'll explain that, and of course your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2 with the number 2 to get involved in the show.
Now, we're all excited about this Peterson-Julio Jones matchup. We're talking two future Hall of Famers. You talked about it all week. Julio Jones, over 1,400 yards in 5 consecutive seasons. He's going to go maybe 1,500, maybe 1,600. Only has 5 touchdowns. So this is a game where you want to watch it and bring your popcorn because I'm really looking forward to this match. You normally don't see this. We know in previous years Patrick's always, covered the number one wide receiver. This year it's a little bit different, playing more zone, trying to match up, some of their better players in the box. So I'm looking forward to this matchup. And not only do they have Julio Jones, Larry Fitzgerald said yesterday during his media session that if you look at the trio, so that means 3. Okay, I just want to make sure I get that right.
Nicely done.
You throw Julio in there, Mohamed Sanu, and then Calvin Ridley, the rookie. They're all a little bit different. They got the physical receiver, they got the speed receiver, and then they got the underneath receiver. So this is going to be an interesting matchup for the Cardinals secondary, talking about guys like Emerson and Antoine Bethea, Budda Baker, who covers the tight end. Hooper, he's got 51 catches this year.
So it'll be interesting to see what the matchup is on Sunday. We'll dive into that matchup further as we go along here on this Football Friday. But first, the news of the day. And head coach Steve Wilks, before the team left for Atlanta, did not rule any player out for Sunday's game against the Falcons. That's good news. First time since Week 6 when the team played at Minnesota that has happened officially. 3 players listed as questionable: Budda Baker, Dayon Buchanan, and Chad Williams. Baker and Buchanan expected to play. Williams was on the practice field, limited on Friday, but the first time in a long time, and according to Wilks, there is, quote, strong possibility, unquote, that Williams does play. He has not seen the field since October 28th. That's a month and a half ago because of either an ankle or hamstring injury. But to have him on the field as another option, if you will, if he's able to go at wide receiver, should help Josh Rosen.
Yeah, and the Cardinals do have a couple undrafted free agent wide receivers on the roster. Trent Sherfield, he's making strides. Jalen Tolliver. You still have J.J. Nelson. Obviously no Christian Kirk, so it'd be interesting how many wide receivers they dress. Williams does have more experience, and they want to see what they have in him over the next couple of weeks. And getting back to Dayon Buchanan, curious to see if the Cardinals try to play a true 4-3 defense. We know the majority they're going to play a 4-2-5. But this allows Buck to get back on the field. Obviously, he was dealing with a chest injury, so curious to see how he plays down the stretch, but they can definitely use him.
Absolutely, and a healthy David Johnson as well. He did not practice on Wednesday because of a quad issue. He was full today. That is good news, and told reporters afterwards, quote, "I'm good to go," unquote. And I don't think there was ever a concern, although, when he doesn't practice, it is raise the eyebrows a little bit, but there was no way 31 was going to miss this game.
Yeah, and he also talked about what it's like to be a lineman behind a makeshift offensive line. And listen, he was a third-round pick. He didn't really get a chance to start until December of his rookie season, so he knows what it's like when you get in there and the opportunity. And he says, I got to do more. I'm a playmaker. I got to get more yardage. And, when Leftwich took over from McCoy, it seemed like they had more creativity. We saw more screens. We saw more mass protection. And last game, he was targeted in the passing game. Unfortunately, he averaged less than 2 yards a catch. So they got to do a better job of getting him more involved, because losing Christian Kirk, who you classified as the number one wide receiver, he gets off press coverage, runs really good routes. Him and Rose are on the same page. Somebody else has to take those targets and touches, and I would think it's Larry Fitzgerald, David Johnson, and hopefully Ricky Seals-Jones, if not Jermaine Gresham.
And someone to take away the attention on a Fitz or David Johnson,
right.
Whether that's the guys that you mentioned, and then maybe this is where Chad Williams can come in and say, I know he's been hurt, hasn't played a lot, but I feel a lot better with him on the field as a wide receiver than I would a Jalen Tolliver or a J.J. Nelson.
Yeah, and Wilkes duped us last week. He told us that Nelson and T.J. Logan were going to be the punt returners, and he said, the Lions are looking at, some of the broadcasts. Are they watching Cards Cover 2?
That's a very good question, because, Wilkes was asked about Peterson today, and he said he will return punts. And then the quote was, because he smiled, about not tipping the Cardinals' hands to the other opponent. Quote, "Those guys listen to our media broadcast just like we listen to theirs, trying to get little tips," unquote. And look, it's part of the scouting. You go to the websites, you read different stories just to see what might sneak in that you don't see on film.
Well, and
then, of course, some of that you guys got to keep in mind that what gets said publicly is not always what happens behind closed doors.
Yeah, it's not confession. I mean, they're trying to win a football game. The last thing you want to do is put your game plan out there. The thing is, a couple years ago, they allowed coordinators to talk on Thursday so these guys can get in front of a camera and possibly get NFL interviews for a head coaching position. I know the Cardinals, when they looked at Steve Wilkes, they went back and watched some of the film, and I'm sure they did it with John DeFilippo, even though he didn't meet with the media, but Frank Wright, Jim Schwartz, Pat Shurmur, obviously, when he was there under Mike Zimmer. So you can learn a lot about these videos. You can learn about personality, scheme, technique, how can they command a room. So I think those videos are very beneficial, and we do appreciate the Lions tuning in the Cards Cover 2. Matt Patricia, he's
and if they want to get involved in the show here, hashtag Cards Cover 2 will attempt to answer some of those questions.
Belichick has a right-hand man. Okay, you see him every Super Bowl hanging out with him. He's got black hair. He's been one. He listens to radio and other stuff, and he reports to Belichick. So when he's asked questions in the media session, he's ready for him.
Patriots are on the schedule next season.
All right.
Okay. Just so
Cards
you're aware.
Cover 2.
Before we really dive into Sunday's game, let's remind everyone that it is a Fitz Friday, hashtag Fitz Friday. Time to hear from number 11, best of Larry Fitzgerald's Q&A with the media. His future, again, a topic of discussion, and specifically how offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich tells Fitz every day to return in 2019.
I mean, I've known B for a very, very long time, as a competitor and now as a coach for the last 3 years, and I have an unbelievable amount of respect for Byron and what he's done throughout his career as a player, and obviously as a coach, being thrust in the position of offensive coordinator in the middle of the season is not easy for anybody, and he's really made the best of it. And I just love him as a person, and very thankful to have him as a coach. But all those type of decisions are going to be made in the off season. Right now, I'm just trying to muster up all the energy I can to perform.
Larry Fitzgerald inside the locker room as he meets the media on Thursday. And, of course, here we are from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, broadcasting our Bose QC35s. We do it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 p.m. here. And, of course, if you ever want to know where to get the show, in case you might miss it, just download it as a podcast via Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, or TuneIn.
You didn't get a chance to hear all of it, but obviously, normally the Cardinals post a lot of his stuff, so you can go to azcardinals.com if you want to see some of the sound bites based on. It seems like over the last 5 or 6 years, when we get to this point in the year, it's always about the future, and you're not going to trump him. I mean, you're not going to get him off guard. I mean, he's programmed. I'm not saying he's a robot, but he's ready for these questions. And we got a lot of new beat writers this year, and they're trying to get in there. Listen, he'll make a decision at the end of the season, and that's why I think we need to enjoy the next 3 weeks, regardless of what happens. I mean, at some point, he's got to make a decision for his future. I'm sure they would love to have him back. Obviously, he brings leadership to the locker room. He's still a productive player. Obviously, he's not the same player he was a few years ago. But and for that home game next week, I hope that we see a lot of 11 jerseys. I mean, we should put it out there right. Like next Friday, everyone should wear their Larry Fitzgerald jersey to work, just because it's the last home game. Now we don't know the future, and then they're on the road in Seattle, so. Just appreciate these next 3 games when it comes to number 11.
And, of course, on Sunday, Cardinals in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, 11 a.m. is the kickoff. 6:30 a.m. pregame coverage begins on the Arizona Cardinals radio network. And if you want to know where to watch, listen, and follow the game, just go to azcardinals.com/GameCentral, azcardinals.com/GameCentral. The quote from both Fitzgerald and Patrick Peterson this week regarding Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones. He's a mutant. The 8-year pro leads the league in receiving and 4th in receptions. And, of course, the matchup, as we've already touched on here with Patrick Peterson, the marquee matchup on Sunday. Here's Cardinals head coach Steve Wilks.
I think it's going to be a great matchup. You're talking about two of the best at their position. And who knows, 2 guys that could be future Hall of Famers. But it's going to be a great contest. I know Patrick is excited about the, I don't want to call it a challenge, but the opportunity to be able to cover Julio.
Now, that was from Wednesday. Thursday, defensive coordinator Al Holcomb asked about the matchup, and he said it was going to take a, quote, collective effort, unquote, against Jones, and that's probably because of what you've mentioned as far as all the different weapons they have at receiver, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, Austin Hooper, they're tied in. But still, when 11 and 21 are on the field, especially if for whatever reason the Falcons get inside the red zone, pay attention to what side, inside or outside, because that's going to be the matchup to pay attention to on Sunday.
Yeah, and the main thing here is that, you look at both of their careers. I mean, we can talk about, not getting a chance to win the ring, and Julio's been there. Unfortunately, lost, but just individual players, these guys are going to be Hall of Famers, and they used to go at it in the SEC when he was at Georgia and Patrick was at LSU. So this is a challenge for him. But again, you just got to eliminate the big plays. You can't allow anything over the top. And one of the beat writers yesterday asked Patrick, do you think you need any help? He said, I don't need any help. I'm going to guard him one-on-one. Now, we'll see how the defense is called. And the Cardinals need to do a really good job in open field tackling, because Ryan's accurate enough. He can make the throws. Now it's can you limit a 15-yard throw to 15 yards, or does it become a 25, 30-yard pickup? Next thing you know, yards after catch could be an issue.
Yeah, the yak yards always something that you pay attention to as a receiver and, of course, as a defensive back as well. Here's Patrick Peterson talking about the matchup everyone wants to see on Sunday.
It's always a great matchup. Julio always brings his A game. I always look to bring my A game as well. Dating back all the way to college, having our matchups and going up against each other. Last year in 2014, thought those were some great matchups as well. I'm just looking forward to playing one of my better games this year. I know he hasn't practiced so far, none this week, but I know he's going to bring his A game as well, because he's arguably the best receiver in the league this year, and having 4 consecutive seasons with 400 yards, you don't need much practice at this point, right?
You do really well. What's the big challenge with him, or is there anything unique to him?
I mean, what he's able to do after the catch, after he catches the ball, what he's able to do, the yak, we definitely have to eliminate that. He's just a very, very big, strong, physical receiver. You really have to bring your lunch pail when you're playing against 11 for Atlanta, because he's explosive, very shifty, and he caused a lot of problems for defensive backs. And he's definitely going to present a lot of problems for me, but hopefully I can keep him tamed and make some plays.
Now, to Peterson's point about Jones's practice this week, he's absolutely correct. He did not practice Wednesday or Thursday, and then was limited earlier today, but there's no question he will play, but he's been bothered by foot and calf injuries, and then on Thursday he was sent home from practice because of illness. So, but at this point here, 15 games into the season, no one is 100%, but something to keep an eye on if you notice Jones maybe slowing down, or all of a sudden a setback occurs during the game.
Yeah, there was a game on Monday night where they marched down the field, and I think he caught 3 catches from the 20 to the 20, and then they got down to the red zone, and he was on the sidelines. He was gasping for air. Now maybe the adrenaline starting the game like that, and obviously going on scripted plays, but he's been targeted 144 times this year, so he may not play every single snap. And if you're suffering from any kind of virus, they can give you an IV. And he's not traveling, so he's good to go come Sunday.
The one thing that everyone talks about in Atlanta, and it was an issue last season, and it's again popped up this year, is the 5 touchdowns. And just you've got that playmaker who can stretch the field and get you down near the goal line. It's just punching it in, Matt Ryan, and he just have not been able to connect. And I think it's not like they haven't looked for him, but it's also a credit to the other team's defense, because when you get down that close, well, what's the number one option? You're going to throw to Julio Jones.
Well, when they had a healthy Tevin Coleman and Dante Freeman, I mean, they just run out of that formation. Usually they bring in some of their extra tight ends. I mean, if you're going to throw the fade route, there's only one guy you throw it to. Now, they're not very efficient in the red zone, and I think that goes back to Steve Sarkisian as the play caller. Now, I mean, they missed Kyle Shanahan, but they moved on. They made a run to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they blew a 25-point lead. But when they get down to the red zone, the field gets shorter and it gets a little tighter. And if you're on the second or third yard line, you're going to want to try to run the ball and kind of will the power from the offensive line. So, but I'm shocked that he only has 5 touchdowns.
The most recent matchups between these two teams, let's go back to 2014. Jones lit up the Cardinals and Peterson. It wasn't all Patrick, but a good portion of it. 10 passes for 189 yards. Then 2 years later, Jones only caught 4 balls for 35 yards. So there was a huge difference between 2014 and 2016. And this is something that 2016 matchup falls in the midst of a tremendous streak for Patrick Peterson. According to Pro Football Focus, he has not allowed 80 or more yards in 68 consecutive games, including the playoffs. And that's the streak is the longest in the 13 years Pro Football Focus has done such data, and that does include the matchup against Jones in 2016.
Now, their offensive line, the two most important positions will be center, Alex Mack, really good center, and then their left tackle, Jake Matthews. They've been healthy. The other 3 positions, they haven't been healthy, so they're going through something where we're going through. All right, what do you think Julio Jones' line is going to be on Sunday?
I think he'll get 4 catches for, off the top of my head, 56 yards.
I think he gets targeted at least 8 times, 5 catches, 67 yards, maybe a touchdown.
As good as he is, and it's not a knock on him. I just think that especially with Patrick and at this point in the season, it's not. I don't want to say it's not about the team, but certainly the individual matchup, I think, for Patrick right now means more at the end of the day, just because he holds that in such high regard that he wants to keep that streak that I just mentioned, and of course shutting down someone he's been matching up ever since college.
No, like I said, that's one of the best matchups this year. I mean, obviously going to Kansas City and holding Mahomes to only 26 points and less than 300 yards. I was looking forward to that matchup. I mean, that's what the NFL's about, and that's where coaching comes in. You have to exploit another team's weakness. I think Belichick is the best at that. So it'd be interesting to see. You're not going to shut him down. You hope to contain him. And then if we're having a conversation on the postgame show, which you can hear on 98.7 FM, is that, okay, how did Sanu play? What did the rookie Calvin Ridley? Did he beat you for 2 touchdowns? And what about Hooper, the tight end? Did he get a long run? So you definitely want to limit his touches and targets, but you better make sure you take care of the other guys too. It's 11-on-11 game football.
6 times this season, Patrick Peterson has allowed 1 or fewer catches in which he's guarded the other team's wide receiver. Asked about that streak, well, Peterson knows he doesn't get a lot of targets overall.
Man, I don't get many opportunities, so it's not hard to keep that number low. But yeah, but I think this week I will have my fair share of opportunities. Matt trusts he have all the trust in the world in Julio. Definitely trust him. We call him the with Julio and Calvin, those quarterbacks, most quarterbacks call them 50-50 balls. With those guys, they call them 75-25. Now, I trust my guys 75% of the time to come down with the ball, and the defensive back probably 25% of the time. So it's gonna be a great game, and I think it's gonna be one that a lot of people been waiting for and want to see. And neither one of us have any playoff implications, so it's all about, I won't necessarily say pride, it's just all about now, what you want to be remembered for at the end of the day.
So if this matchup goes back to college, does that give the DB the advantage?
Nah, I won't. Honestly, I would say neither one of us have the advantage, because he had his fair share of wins. I believe I had my fair share of wins, and it's like I put in my notes on Tuesday. Here we go, best versus the best. So, these are the type of matchups I live and thrive for. I'm sure he's the same way. And, this is why you play the game of football. This is why, Hall of Famers are Hall of Famers. This is why greats are greats, because they look forward to these type of matchups. And, this week is nothing different. I just want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make sure I'm on top of my game.
Now, we've talked about some of the disappointing teams, and, of course, we're disappointed here that we're talking about, 3 wins, and hopefully, they can play strong down the stretch. But this team has lost the Falcons 5 in a row. They lost on the road 5 in a row, and they lost last week on the road, but they lost back-to-back home games. Now, ownership has come out and said that both Thomas Dimitroff, the general manager, and the head coach, Dan Quinn, are safe. But it's just surprising where they lose the Super Bowl, and then they go on the road last year and beat the Rams in the postseason, and here they are with just one more win than the Cardinals. Now, they've had a lot of injuries on defense. I mean, we're talking really good players in the secondary. We talked about the offensive line, but they still have their starting center and a starting left tackle. They lost one of their running backs. So, interesting. In that division, though, last year they put 3 teams in the playoffs, and the Panthers are kind of treading water right now. The Buccaneers are looking ahead to next season, but the Saints, and then you got the Falcons. You got to think they're trying to get in as a wild card, but it may be a little too late unless they're able to go on a roll.
Yeah, the Falcons overall 4-9, and you mentioned the injury to Devontae Freeman. They rely heavily now on running back Tevin Coleman, but I was just looking through the notes, and we know the struggles the Cardinals have had running the football themselves. The Falcons are worst in the league. They're number 32, and they have run the ball 273 times this season. That is the fewest in the NFL. So you talk about what the number one goal of a defensive coordinator is to stop the run, make another team one-dimensional. The Falcons are the greatest definition of one-dimensional, and the fact that at least the Cardinals are trying to run the football unsuccessfully. The Falcons, they look to pass first.
Points allowed. Cardinals 21st, 327. Falcons 367, 29th. Yards per game. Arizona's 31st, averaging 84. They're 32nd, averaging 81. Defensive rush game. Falcons, they're ranked 26th, giving up 131 yards on the ground, and the Cardinals are 30th, 139. So something's got to give here in this ball game.
Absolutely. The Cardinals and Falcons again on Sunday, 11 a.m. is the kickoff, 6:30 a.m. pregame coverage on the Arizona Cardinals radio network as we continue here on Cards Cover 2 from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center as we broadcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in our Bose QC 35s. Get to your questions later on in the show using the hashtag Cards Cover 2. Hashtag Cards Cover 2. Still got time to get your questions in here on this Football Friday. Now, we talked a lot about the wide receivers, the running backs. Haven't really talked much about Matt Ryan, longtime Falcons quarterback, his 11th season. And against the Cardinals, great numbers as far as the one-loss record is concerned. He's 4-1, but when you dive a little bit deeper, he's been picked off 11 times by the Cardinals. So it's one of those things, well, what do you measure a quarterback by? Well, it's the one-loss mark, and he's 4-1, yet he's had no success as far as turning the football over. He's a turnover machine against this Cardinals defense, historically.
Well, that's good to hear. I remember, and you're going to see some highlights of it, I remember when they were 11-5, and they came to State Farm Stadium, and the Cardinals were 9-7. And the Cardinals came out in the third quarter. It was Darnell Dockett that was able to knife through there, and Antro Roll picked up the fumble and scored, and then the game was pretty much. But they found out something on Matt Ryan, their linebackers coach Matt Raich. He noticed that when he would snap the ball, he would lift his heel up. So they got to jump on the line of scrimmage there, and here's an 11-5 team coming in here thinking they're going to walk on the Cardinals, and then next thing you know, they go to Carolina, and we all know what happened after that, win the NFC Championship game and get a chance to go to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to blame it all on Steve Sarkisian, but you could just see he was so comfortable with Kyle Shanahan, and the injuries don't help, but he has a tendency to throw interceptions. Now, he's got 20 touchdowns this year.
Yes.
And he has a tendency to fumble. He's not the most mobile guy or nimble guy in the pocket. So get to his feet. Try to make him move around to make an ill-advised throw. And then if the Cardinals can win the turnover battle, maybe we're having a good conversation after the game on Sunday night.
Well, the Cardinals' defense this season has played great quarterbacks week in and week out, but what they've done the past 2 weeks to Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford, I mean, last week 101 passing yards, his second worst mark of his career, talking about what Stafford did. Now you're looking for this defense to do it a third time, and yeah, maybe Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, and Matt Ryan, I'd still put Rodgers in that elite category. Maybe Ryan and Stafford not quite there, at least not this season. But still, you're talking about franchise quarterbacks that the Cardinals are now 3 in a row trying to not pitch shutouts, but do a very solid job. And all of a sudden, the question is, how has this happened? Because it wasn't happening earlier in the season. You go from Aaron Rodgers to Matthew Stafford now to Matt Ryan. Can the Cardinals do it 3 weeks in a row? That was the question put forth to defensive coordinator Al Holcomb.
Really all 11 men's job to affect it, whether it's affecting the rush or the vision of the quarterback, whether it's guys getting to their landmarks or matching routes or playing man-to-man. It's been good. We've done, I think, we've tried to do a good job of mixing some things up, from a schematic standpoint. And we have a good rush. And if we can make the quarterback pause and hold it for a split second, either the rush gets there or, the coverage is good and the rush may not get there, but the coverage is good and we force some errant throws. So been pleased with that.
Something that doesn't get discussed, and I think it's because of the record, and sometimes they've given up, a lot of points in certain games, but the Cardinals right now in their pass defense, they are ranked 4th in the NFL, only giving up 210 yards. And you talked about the quarterbacks they faced, even in week 1, Alex Smith, Jared Goff, Trubisky,
Patrick Mahomes,
Russell Wilson, Mahomes. And as for the Falcons, they're ranked 21st. They're giving up 255 yards in the air per game. So curious to see if somehow, some way, the Cardinals can force some turnovers. And again, get Matt Ryan in some 3rd and long, and we'll see if he throws the ball to you.
And the defensive line.
All starts there.
Holcomb mentioned, as far as that push, whether it's from the inside with Rodney Gunter, Corey Peters, or the outside with Chandler Jones. And that was something that Peterson credited as well, because the defensive backs, you're asking them to cover for however many seconds. Well, it can be a long time if that rush is not there, or it can be very, very short if Chandler Jones is getting in the backfield. Now you're getting the quarterback to rush their throw, which gives the DBs an opportunity to make plays on the secondary.
Yeah, and Dayon Buchanan's going to be in there. You got to figure Hassan Reddick, and then we'll see, who they try to move around a little bit. Do we get a hybrid, or they go at Hodges from that standpoint? I mean, so the front 7, they have to stop the run. They got to put them in 3rd and long, and if they can win in the trenches up front, then you're going to see a linebacker lead this team in tackles, whether it's Reddick or Buchanan.
And Reddick did so last week with a career-high 11 in what was his best game of his career. Now the question, can you do it in back-to-back weeks?
See, even though the season hasn't gone according to plan, you're starting to see some of these guys pan out.
And he might be number 1 on that list as far as that light bulb going on.
They buried him, and he's a former first-round pick. Now, in fairness to him, he always played with his hand in the dirt. Now, and I think he does a good job in the flat, covering running backs, can cover tight ends down the field, and he's become a better open field tackler. So that's what you want. I mean, you love to have your defensive line lead the team in tackles. And, I always tweet out, well, Budda Baker and Bethea lead the NFL in combined tackles. And people's like, is that a good thing? I'm like, well, Budda plays in the front 7, And if Josh Bynes was healthy, he would have loved this team in tackles. So the way they mix and match, but if you can play a true 4-3 defense, maybe that you can force the Falcons to be in 3rd and long, and that would really help the Cardinals.
Now let's flip the script here and take a look at the Falcons and their defense. And they've got great talent, and you talked about some of the injuries they have, but as far as guys that are still on the field playing every week, Vic Beasley, Jack Crawford on the outside, Grady Jarrett inside, and that's almost 14 sacks just between those three, so they've been able to get to the quarterback. Their leading tackler from last season, Deion Jones, is working his way back from a broken foot, so they're still somewhat question mark in the linebackers, but it's not a defense that's getting a lot of attention this season. It's because they've given up a ton of points. I mean, almost 28 or more than 28 a game. But at the same time, it's going to take the Cardinals to show what they didn't last week against the Lions, and that's move the football and actually punch the ball into the end zone.
Yeah, you start looking at it. I mean, they lose Andy Levitre. He tore his tricep a guard. Ben Garland, he's dealing a back injury. He's probable for Sunday. And then they lose Ricardo Allen. He tore his Achilles a corner. And then Keanu Neal, he tore up his knee. He's on IR. And then, so you look at the injuries, and there were young players they drafted. So that you could see that if they were able to control the front seven, they had a really good secondary. And playing in that division, guarding those wide receivers, that was their strength. Unfortunately, injuries obviously occurred. And that next man up, it only works at certain spots.
One other name on that Falcons defense, actually a local product, rookie cornerback Isaiah Oliver out of Brophy Prep here in Phoenix, and something to pay attention to perhaps on Sunday to see the local boy against the hometown team. Here is Cardinals head coach Steve Wilks on this Falcons defense.
Defensively, they're still pretty good. Up front, they still get after the quarterback. They lost a couple of guys on the back end, Neal being one of the key guys back there. But, True Fun is still playing at a high level. So it's going to be a good game.
I would love to see this game like a 180 from what we saw last week with David Johnson specifically, whether it's in the run game or just out in space with him lined up, because he lined up a lot as a wide receiver. And then you stick Chase Edmonds in the backfield, and all of a sudden you've got your two playmakers on the field. But and I don't know if it falls. I know Johnson, talking with the media earlier today, said it was on him. I think it's a combination on him, on the coaches, and on the offensive line and the tight ends to all work together and figure out what works best so Johnson could have the success that we anticipated this season and just haven't had on a consistent basis.
Yeah, you'd like to see them be able to sync up and have more rhythm on offense. Like, we know it's difficult to go on 10 and 12 play drives. You got to pick up 2 or 3 first downs. Sometimes you get a penalty. Sometimes you get a big chunk play. So they have to do their job when it comes to protection and everything else. But I'll say this. We haven't talked about Zane Gonzalez, and there's probably 5 guys that I want to see really show up in the next 3 games. And obviously Corey Cunningham, if Tolliver or Sherfield, get an opportunity, I'd like to see what they can do. And then I'll put Zane Gonzalez in there. I mean, because he's young, he's got a strong leg. He had missed a kick. He missed a kick last week. But I think in the perfect scenario, you bring in another kicker for competition. Plus, you don't want your kicker kicking all the time. But I want to see Gonzalez end on a good note. And there's others on the roster, considering Colby Gassett. To me, he could be your plug-and-play left guard next year. So, Chase Edmonds, want to see more strides from him. Mason Cole. So even though the record may not reflect it, Craig, they want to see what they have in these guys, because when we get to the offseason, they're going to say, well, we got to upgrade this guy. He's more of a depth guy. This guy's a starter. So it's important that these rookies and second and third year players, Chad Williams, they continue to make progress, or in this case, show progress.
Well, and if Gonzalez is one of those guys that you can count on for 2019 and maybe beyond, then all of a sudden you're taking care of special teams, kicker, punter, long snapper, and then figure out the return game. The Cardinals have kind of been hit and miss on that. But Andy Lee has been punting phenomenally. I'll still make the case that he's certainly Pro Bowl worthy, and you can make a case that he's the Cardinals MVP as far as most consistent guy from week 1 to now heading into week 15. All he does is kick better than 48, 49-yard balls. It's just unfortunate Cardinals haven't been able to take advantage of all that. But that's an area, 1/3 of the game, that we haven't talked a lot about, because typically when you talk about special teams is when something goes wrong. and that hasn't been the case.
And I asked that question to Wilkes because he doesn't get talked about because he is the partner, but he wanted to give credit to Brandon Williams and Rudy Ford. He said those guys have done an excellent job going down there, and you got to give Lee a lot of credit, Craig, for his hang time. So he's a weapon. He's part of the defense when they got to force a punt. He's going to change field position. I love the way he's able to pin teams in their 20 or 10-yard line. So he's under contract next year. It seemed like we weren't talking about special teams as much this year. Obviously, Dawson had some miscues, and he's on IR right now. But I like to see Zane Gonzalez kind of take a stranglehold on that position moving forward.
That's Mike Jurecki. I'm Craig Riolu, and this is Cards Cover 2 as we come to you from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center and, of course, broadcasting in our Bose QC35s here on a Football Friday. Still to come, we'll get to your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2. Hashtag CardsCover2 with the number 2 to get involved in the show here on this afternoon. Now, coming up on Saturday, Season in Focus, 6:30 on 12 News. One of the topics spotlighted is Derek Coleman, the Cardinals fullback, also the first offensive deaf player in the NFL. Recently, he spoke at the Phoenix Day School for the Deaf.
How you guys doing? In case you guys don't know, my name is Derek Coleman. I play fullback for the Arizona Cardinals. I'm also the first hard of hearing / deaf person to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. The game of football, there is no excuses, none. And that's kind of how life is. Everybody in here has a problem of their own. Whether you can hear, whether you can't hear, everybody here has a problem. Meaning, nobody is perfect in this world. We can't be shy. If you didn't hear something, you gotta go up. Hey, what do you say? Quarterback giving me the play in the huddle. Oh, okay, everybody. I might not hear it. Okay, I stepped to him. What did you say? Oh, he told me back. But the beautiful thing is, all of us here have hearing loss. All of us here are deaf or hard of hearing. All of you guys have each and every one of you guys to help you. If one of you guys are feeling down, you can turn to your neighbor, you can turn to your classmate, you can turn to the teacher. They know what you're going through. Be the best that you can be. The key word is you. If you can be the best version of yourself, that's all anybody can ask for. That's all your parents want for you. That's all you want for yourself. All the bullying that you guys been through, I've had that experience. You're not alone in it. Just keep a smile on your face and keep going.
Does not want to be considered a role model, but he certainly is one. And you can see more of Coleman's story Saturday night, 6:30, Season in Focus on 12 News.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Powerful message to those kids, and he can relate to them, and they can relate to him. So he's been a nice addition. I know they don't use the fullback as much, but he plays on special teams, and he's a guy that can block. It's just sometimes they want to get their playmakers on the field. But what a powerful message, and hope people are able to check it out tomorrow night at 6:30.
Yeah, real good guy on the field and better guy off the field, considering what he's had to deal with, and now spreading that message to others. All right, before we let the Bird Gang sound off, how about we open up the Big Red Vaults, and on this Football Friday, we flash back to January 3rd, 2009.
2nd and 5 now at the Atlanta 42. They're going to keep it on the ground with James. It's a flea flicker. Warner going to throw deep. Near side going for Fitz. He's in double coverage. It doesn't matter. He caught it anyway. Touchdown Cardinals. You can't stop that guy.
I'm the flea flicker. Wow. What a play.
On the way to the Cardinals' Super Bowl appearance in 2009, the wild card matchup. Cardinals over the Falcons, 30-24. Kurt Warner, a couple of touchdown passes, including that one to Larry Fitzgerald, who had 6 catches for 101 yards. A dominating performance by Fitz during that playoff run.
That playoff run was his coming out party, and then what he did in the Eagles game and the Super Bowl. He became a household name. We all knew how good he was watching practice and the numbers he put up in college. But that playoff run really put him on the map from a national perspective. And I'll never forget that catch. Obviously, his first catch was also a flea flicker.
Yes.
Emmitt Smith threw it back to Josh McCown against the Rams, Aeneas Williams on the coverage there. And then what he did in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. I mean, he just took over.
Double teamed, in traffic. It didn't matter. Just throw the ball up.
And Warner was so accurate. And then what he did in the Super Bowl, less than 2 minutes left in the game. Again, you better enjoy Larry Fitzgerald until he makes a decision, because right now, the next week is the home game, and I hope we see a ton of 11 jerseys.
Yeah, coming up this Sunday, though, from Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Cardinals and Falcons at 11 a.m. 6:30 a.m. is the pregame coverage beginning here on the Arizona Cardinals Radio Network. All right, time for the Bird Gang to sound off here on this Football Friday using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2, and we'll begin with Twitter, and a user wants to know about Budda Baker. Can he be the future star in this system?
He's definitely made strides. If I had to say who's the breakout player this year on defense, now I went with Kim Dichie. I was wrong there. Unfortunately, he couldn't stay healthy, and now he's on IR. So, yeah, Budda Baker to me is a playmaker, and I knew it was going to be an adjustment for him. He didn't look particularly well in week 1 because he's playing much closer to the line of scrimmage, but he's a smart football player. He's a guy that attacks the ball. He's really good on special teams. You know, when you have a pass rusher like Chandler Jones and a really good corner in Patrick Peterson, maybe he won't get the spotlight, but if you know football, his football IQ is off the charts. He loves playing football. He wants to be great.
If you want to talk about breakout player, it might be still a little early, because if he does it like he did last week for these next 3 games, now you're getting a closing finish by Hassan Reddick. Perhaps he has turned that corner. Now you're going from a rookie to his second year. That's always the big jump, but he made a jump from the first quarter of the season to the last quarter of the season was just night and day.
Yeah, and Budda's missed a few games where Hassan was basically, he wasn't getting a lot of snaps. So I look at body of work. I still give the edge to Budda Baker, but I really like the way that Hassan Reddick's playing. He can give this team a lift on game day.
On Twitter, as we take a look at Sunday's matchup, Cardinals and Falcons, we spent a good deal on this show talking about Patrick Peterson and Julio Jones, but this user wants to know, MJ, what other matchup is key for the Cardinals on Sunday?
Well, I think it's the Cardinals' offensive line against that front seven. I mean, they got to get the running game going. I mean, not that you need to jam it in the line, but move David Johnson around. I like what Craig said. Put Chase Edmonds in the backfield. He's kind of shifty. I don't want to compare him to like Warwick Dunn, but he's a guy that can get through and maybe take a 5-yard gain and make it 6 or 7 or 8 yards. He doesn't fall down at first contact. So, yeah, I mean, that's another matchup. And then I would say that Cardinals secondary against the other receivers, because as Coach Holcomb has told us, it's 11 on 11. It's not like Larry's playing or Patrick's playing against Julio. It's the other 10 guys. So if they play team defense, I would say the other matchups with the DBs against their other wide receivers.
David Amerson could be huge for the Cardinals defense. He's played well the past couple of weeks, and he is going to get targeted a lot, or whoever's on that other side or in the slot, if Julio Jones is blanketed by Peterson.
Yeah, and we really haven't talked about Bethea and Boston as much as some of these other guys, and those guys can lead to interceptions. Boston has interceptions, Bethea has interceptions, so it's nice to see if whoever's taking that third receiver, okay, and it may not be Ridley, the rookie, it could be Sanu based on formations and down and distance. Let's see if those guys can get some picks.
Staying with your social media questions here on Cards Cover 2, let's move to Instagram. This is kind of a big picture, but user wants to know the best player on this team right now.
I think it's either Chandler Jones or
first
Patrick
name that popped
Peterson.
in my head.
I still put Larry in there. I know that he's getting older, but usually it's a guy that plays one of the 4 premier positions: quarterback, left tackle, pass rusher, or corner. So I would go Chandler Jones and Patrick Peterson. But Budda Baker, to me, is right in the team picture.
Chandler Jones has the numbers to back it up as far as sacks, hits, pressures, tackles for loss. Peterson does not. But it's the analytical numbers or just looking at him on film, what the coaches notice about Peterson, that it's hard for fans because you look at like, oh, he doesn't have any interceptions, or he's got 1 or 2, or no passes defense, no tackles. But as we've talked about, he can get bored on that other side because if the ball's not coming in his direction, it's not his fault.
Yeah, I would like to see Andy Lee, but we know how valuable he is on special teams. But when you look at a position player, I would have to go with Chandler Jones and Patrick Peterson.
Appreciate the Bird Gang sounding off here on this Football Friday. And, of course, we do it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center using the hashtag CardsCover2, Hashtag Cards Cover 2 will do it again next week. And because Brandon Natus, who usually joins us here on Fridays, but he is with the team as they travel to Atlanta here this afternoon, we need a uniform update. And Cardinals on Sunday, white on white.
White on white.
I should have just said it was my decision, but since we give credit to Brandon for making that decision, the Cardinals are wearing white on white based off Cards Cover 2.
Yes, he tweeted it out, put it on Instagram earlier today. I'm wondering about next week.
How about you just enjoy Sunday before we get...
I am, but we'll get Brandon in here. Could we see red on red?
Final home game.
Right around Christmas.
Close to Christmas. Okay.
We'll see.
We'll see how much leverage you have. With
I have zero leverage.
No?
No, when they make the announcement, because people, I always talk about this. People want to wear.
People care. They want to, yes.
They want to wear the same jersey the Cardinals are wearing. They want to sync it up. So if some teams send it out earlier, we get it usually. Last week got it on Monday when they're going to wear black.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're waiting with suspense when it comes to next Friday on what the uniform combo can be.
Cards Cover 2 wants red on red, Brandon. If you're
we're wearing red today.
Exactly. Yes. Just follow suit. Trendsetters here.
They don't want us on the field.
No, they don't.
You guys want to be the water boys for the day?
That's going to wrap up this edition of Cards Cover 2 here on a Football Friday. Special thanks to those behind the scenes, Tim Delaney, Jim Alejandro, Devin Henry, Grayson Choi, Javier Rodriguez, Brandon Natus, and Jackson Sipes. For my partner, Mike Jarecki, I'm Craig Riolu. As we leave you here on this Friday, time to get you hyped for Week 15. It's the Cardinals and Falcons from Atlanta.
With 3 games to go, it's up to every Cardinals player to search for motivation and meaning. For some, it's to prove they are worthy of being a part of the 2019 plan in Arizona. Shine today and be a part of the show tomorrow.
Great catch for a first down by Sherfield.
Others can take pride in finishing the season strong, being a pro when it'd be easy to go through the motions. Perhaps most importantly, it's 3 valuable opportunities to grow and take the next step for the future cornerstones of the organization.
Josh Rosen looked them off beautifully.
Cardinals, Falcons, Game 14 of the 2018 season. Sunday.